Good morning, Dave from Phoenix Fruit Farm. We're going to do part 4 today of the maple syrup harvest, production, whatever you'd like to call it. So I don't know if you watched the last episode. Went out and gathered sap on the 9th. This is the 11th, so 2 days ago. Brought it back, pumped it into the storage tank. Ran it through the reverse osmosis system. We started out, I had 180 gallons of sap, and just finished up running through this morning, and we come up with 60 gallons. So in other words, I took out 2/3 of the water out of this. And so, of course, to make this a lot shorter cooking time. So this is going to be a pretty big batch. I normally have around 50 or so gallons, when I start cooking, but I'm going to make sure I do all of this. Yeah, so what we do, we bring her out, I roll it out. I got this barrel out to my, back up here a little bit. You see the sugar shack a little bit. It's just a little shack I built just specifically for this purpose. And in here, I'm just getting the fire coaxed into going a little bit. You really need a good roaring fire because you want to keep this pan up here boiling. I pump 40 gallons into this pan, which is about all you want to put in, because once it just about starts into a boil, it starts to foam up quite a bit and can run over. I usually skim it off with a deal I have, but it can. I just don't like filling it fuller than that. That's full enough. And then, so the other 20 gallons we got left over, I use this turkey cooker thing, and this pan that I have on there is actually I bought from a brewing supply company, Northern Brewer, I think. And so it's got it just comes with that fitting welded in, then you add on your valve and whatever you want to add on. So, as I do, I heat that up to a boil, because you just don't want to put cold sap in with your boiling sap, or you'll be like all day trying to keep a boil going. And so when it gets to boiling, I just turn the spigot on and let it run in. And we go from there, and then that runs out. I get the next 5 gallons or so and dump in there, and so I'll have to do it like 4 times today probably. So anyway, that's kind of how that all works. And of course, I'll just mention that kettle. I also use that when I bottle, and it's very good. It works pretty good, I mean, all my systems are a little bit old school, so, but, for the little as I produce, the 50 gallons or so, it's good enough. There's a lot, you can buy a lot fancier pans than this one I've got, ones that are they have channels in them, and you can, cook the syrup, kind of runs through it, down one channel, up the other channel, and back and forth, and it comes out on the end supposedly done. I think most people end up having to finish it like in a kettle or something, but they cost a lot of money, and I just like doing this like one batch at a time. We'll come back a little later once we get a boil going, and I'll tell you I built my little furnace here out of an old oil drum, as you can kind of see, and I got it lined with fire brick inside there, and works pretty good. So, had the pan made, just to fit it. So anyway, we get a boil going, and I'll tell you that takes about, from the time I light the fire until it boils, it's about an hour and 15 minutes, just about every time. So I got to keep pouring the wood to it, get a good blaze going here. And we'll come back when it's boiling and show you how that's going. Well, we're back. We finally got a boil going here. Try to show you, it's hard to see because there's a lot of steam taking place here. But, that's kind of what she looks like. Took a little longer than normal, because we got took me about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 25 minutes to get it going today. Usually hour 15. A few problems with my wood. And over here on the side, we can see we got our preheated stuff going. What I'm going to do now, it's doing a good boil, so I'm going to open that up, open the valve up, let it start running into the pan. Also, keep an eye on that, try not to forget it. I already have skimmed off a lot of the foam that forms when it first starts to boil. There's going to be a little left. I'll get that later. As you get down here and look into the firebox, you see it's a beautiful fire going. Little problem I have. I like to burn oak. For one thing, it really will build up a great big coal bed. And I get a lot of the wood I get from an Amish outfit that cuts pallet wood. And so I get these bundles, I'll show you in a minute. And I use those, but a quick look at my high-tech air induction system here. And I can't stress enough that you really need a hot fire, and it takes a lot of tending to keep it that way. But anyway, I use this kind of short wood like this because, for one thing, I like to keep my fire in the front of the box up here because it tends to rise up and travel the whole length of the pan heading back to the chimney back there. And so I use shorter wood, and I try to keep the fire up front as much as possible. And so anyway, like I was telling you, this is the wood I get, and it comes in bundles like this that are 42-inch. The pieces are 42 inches long, and the bundle is 48 inches otherwise. And so then I just take chainsaw and I cut them into the kind of lengths I want, that I am going to use here. I also use the same wood in my boiler here that I heat the house and the shop with. And I still use some of this because some of my wood that I cut, because it's in the cold weather, it's better to have some bigger wood. You can see a lot of this stuff is smaller, thin. But the problem I had with this bundle, I keep them covered. I have some of this signboard material, and I keep it covered down the sides and then the ends all the way around. But it appears as though this bundle had a hole in someplace in the top I didn't see. So the whole bundle's kind of wet. The wood itself is like 2 years old, so it's good in season, but now it's got wet. Okay. What we'll do, we get close to the bitter end here where we're going to pull this off, and we got to cook down, which is going to be like 5 hours from now, probably 4 maybe. This is a big batch. So like I said, we got 60 gallons. And I'll cover that again. I think I mentioned it earlier, but we've taken out about 2/3 of the water. So the sap that came out of the trees, when I mixed it all together, I had about 2.4% sugar. As you've seen on the other video where we measure that with a refractometer. And this, after running it through the RO system, we got it to 6.8, which is just about tripling the sugar content. So it's lots of times, if I let it go. I ran it at the higher sugar content because I wasn't pressed for time. Now, if we were having a really hard run, I would probably only try to double it rather than triple the sugar content because you don't want to let your sap sit around a long time, especially when it warms up, because all the wild yeast in the air and the sugar in the sap, pretty quick it's going to start fermenting on you, and it's not going to it's not going to be good syrup. So if you let that happen, so it's best to, like I said, I had time, so I went up to this with it, but normally I'll just try to double it if I'm going to be pressed here for time. So, all right, we'll come back a little later. Well, now we're back out to the cooker, and you see it's been, well, let's see, we started the fire about 8:30 this morning. Now it's almost just about 1:30 in the afternoon. And so we've been cooking for quite a while. We're approaching the end. It'll probably take me another hour before we get to the point where we pull it off. But, you know, we started out with 40 gallons, and then I added another 20, of course, through the preheater. As you can see, the preheater's gone. I got that out of the road. So we started out there was like 7 inches in the pan with 40 gallons, and we're probably down to about 2, maybe 3 inches left. So it's getting there. But what we're going to do now, we're going to put our refractometer back into use. We're going to go over and we're going to see where we're at. I'm going to suspect it's probably only around 12% or something, but we'll see. Like I say, when it's really hot like that, you kind of got to watch. You got a temperature thing over here. You kind of want to let it equal out a little bit before you take a reading, or it'll error out on you. So that's what we're waiting for now. Just watching the temperature climb there a little bit. Once it starts to get slow before it turns, then I'll read it. And it looks like that's about where we would be. So we'll give it a reading. Yeah, we're at 18.3. It's further along than I thought it was. You know, you kind of can tell by the color a little bit, but yeah, so that's pretty good. So we need to get to 66. Is by law, where they have laws about syrup, like Vermont and Canada, and well, probably Wisconsin too. It's got to be 66% sugar before you can call it maple syrup. So that being said, the other day, the last batch I cooked, I got a little preoccupied with something else, and I was getting down to the end here, and I measured it, and it was further along than I wanted it to be, and I got it yanked off, and after it cooled, and I had filtered it, and it cooled, I checked it the next day, and 71.3%, I think. And the only problem with that is, it's really sweet, but if you start getting up 69 to 70, 71%, you're going to run into problems with it crystallizing. It's going to crystallize in the bottle, which don't hurt. You can melt it, you know, but you really don't want that if you're trying to sell it, you know. So what I generally do then is this batch here, I may pull it off prematurely to make it a little lighter, and then I will mix those two when I go to bottle. I'll put, you know, divvy them up 50-50 and lower the sugar content of one and raise the other one. So we'll see how that works out. Okay, so I just checked again, and we're at like 20%. So, you know, things are getting to where we're going to want them. Stuff over here, I've got a plate that of course, you know, when I pull that pan off, there's going to be an open fire there. So, being as we're inside, I've got this hoist up here. I got a plate down there, and so when we pull the pan off, the first thing I do is lift that plate up, put it over the fire. We get down here toward the end, and at this point, I'm going to pull the holder up here. I'll do it over here so you can see a little better. Pull this up, set up. This is where I pull the pan off. Pull it right off over here. As we get a little closer, I'm going to let the fire start settling down a little bit so it's not quite so hot. Yeah, because we get down to the bottom here. This is important to remember if you ever think you're going to, use a big pan like this. You get down here to the bottom, you're only going to have probably, I might have a little more in this one, but you're probably only going to have about, on a normal batch, you're probably only going to have about 1 inch of sap in the bottom of this pan. So if you're setting up a pan like this, you want to make sure everything is really level, which this is, because you don't want one end of the pan being empty and the other end having syrup in, because you'll have a real burned mess is what you'll have. So that's important. So we'll give this a little longer, then we'll come back. Yeah, Dave, I thought I'd check back in a little bit. We're getting down here. I just checked for 32.8. So she gets close to 40. Actually, I'm going to let this fire start settling down a little bit here. But it was starting to really rise in the pan and foam up, and so you need to keep a little, I got some canola oil here, just some unfiltered, and I put a little bit in each corner of the pan, and that'll helps to settle it down. And you just don't want to get carried away, because it can affect the flavor of your syrup if you put too much in there. So just another little hint. I just checked again, we're at 57, and like I said, I just want to pull this off when it's light, so when we hit 60, I'm just going to give it a little longer, and then we're going to yank it. But now you can see how shallow that is in the pan. There's about 1 inch in there. Of course, it's turned to that nice, beautiful brown color, and and of course, the reason for that is because we were all this cooking is caramelizing the sugars. So that's where you get a lot of the flavor, and that's where you also, get a lot of the color. So it's looking good. Okay, well, we just hit 60. And if you could see in the pan, you'd see it's really starting to dance in there, the bubbles. So we're going to get into position here, and of course we're shooting for about 63 or 64. We'll see how that works out. Some days it does and some days it don't, but we got to be pretty close right now. So just going to give it a few more seconds, then we're going to yank it. All right, that looks good. Pull it over here onto my little rollers. Okay, get it out of the road. Now we're going to get the fire covered up before we burn the place down. Something up here. Oh, we got a bolt. There we go. There. There, we get this unhooked. Maybe. Get the hoist out of the way. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to drain her into our pan that we have here, our multi-purpose pan. Of course, there's so little syrup in there, you got to prop it up to make it work here, make it flow. Now we lift the pan, we're going to let her start running in there. Oh, that's how that all works. Of course, this pan has a valve on it, and one time I didn't check to make sure the valve was shut, and I ran about 1 gallon of syrup out on the ground, and that after all this is just about enough to make a grown man cry, so I check her pretty tight.